In 336 BC, a king stood over a man living in a clay barrel. The king asked what he could do for him. The man, half blind from the sun, looked up and said, "Move, you're blocking my light." The king was Alexander. He would die screaming at 32, with the world as his pillow. The man was Diogenes, who owned nothing, feared nothing, and died at 90 in peace. You've been told winning means accumulation, status, certainty, control. Losing is failure. What if every philosopher, whoever frightened the powerful, believed the exact opposite? What if the only way to truly win, in a way nothing and no one can take from you, is to first lose every single thing you've been taught to protect? The men who understood this didn't write self-help. They wrote in plague tents, in cells, in exile. And what they found would, if taken seriously, dismantle the architecture of how you currently live. The first loss, the outcome. Marcus Aurelius woke up most mornings and rehearsed his own death. Not as fear, as preparation. He'd lie in his imperial bed, Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man on earth, and walk around through losing it all. His son turning rotten, the plague taking him, betrayal, public shame. Each morning, before the world could hand him a tragedy, he handed himself one. The Stoics had a name for this, premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils. To them, it wasn't pessimism, it was strategy. Because the man who had already mentally lost everything cannot be held hostage by anything. He has nothing left to be threatened with. Most people live the opposite way. Every morning they rehearse what they want. The promotion, the relationship, the validation. They build a mental cathedral around the outcome and walk through life as its hostage. Anything that threatens the cathedral becomes a personal attack. This is the first prison. And it's the one that almost no one sees, because the bars are made of hope. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi spent 30 years studying flow states, the moments humans perform at their absolute peak. His finding was uncomfortable for everyone who reads productivity books. The instant you start thinking about the outcome, winning the match, finishing the painting, being seen as good, you exit the state where you actually perform the best. The grip on the outcome destroys the thing you're gripping for. The grip distorts. The grip blinds. The grip turns every variable into a threat. There's an old story about a Roman commander who, the night before a decisive battle, called for wine and laughed. His officers thought him mad. He told them he'd already imagined his army slaughtered, his name disgraced, his children sold into slavery. There was nothing left for fortune to take him from his mind. The next morning, he fought without fear, because fear lives in the unimagined. Notice what's happening here. The mainstream story tells you to visualize success, manifest it, see yourself winning. The dark version, the older version, the one that actually worked, is the opposite. Visualize losing. Visualize the worst. Make yourself unkillable by imagining yourself already dead. Look at your own life right now. Pick the thing that you fear the most losing. The job, the person, the reputation. Sit with it. Imagine it gone. Not as catastrophe, as fact. What you'll notice, if you do this honestly, is something strange. The grip loosens. The thing becomes lighter. You can actually engage with it instead of choking it. This is what every Stoic understood, and almost no modern self-help book will tell you. You don't lose what you can release. You only lose what you're choking. But the outcome is just the surface. There's something underneath it that's harder to give up, and almost no one ever does. The second loss, the mask. Viktor Frankl had everything taken from him. His wife, his parents, his brother. The manuscript he worked on for years was confiscated and destroyed at the gates of Auschwitz. His name was replaced with a number. His clothes were taken. His hair was shaved. The Nazis perfected a system designed to do one thing: erase the person inside. And yet, Frankl noticed something most prisoners missed. The Nazis could take his body, his work, his family, even his future, but there was one thing they could not take: the space, even half a second long, between what happened to him and how he chose to respond. In that space, he was still someone, not someone they had defined, someone else, something they couldn't reach. Frankl wrote that this realization saved his life, but more than that, it revealed something terrible about the rest of us. Most people, in conditions of total comfort, surrender that exact same space voluntarily. They give it away every day, to bosses and partners, and strangers, and the imagined audience in their own head. That imagined audience is what I want you to look at. There is a person in your mind who watches everything you do. They evaluate every choice, every word, every flinch. You think it's you. It isn't. It's an assembly, a composite ghost made up of every parent, teacher, peer, ex, and stranger online who ever judged you, edited you, withheld love from you. And you spent so many years performing for this ghost that you've forgotten there's a real person underneath the performance. This is the second prison. It's heavier than the first because you can't see it. The Sufis had a word for the moment this finally collapses: fana, annihilation, the dissolution of the false self. They've considered it the highest stage of spiritual development, and they said something unsettling about it. They said most people cannot endure it. The mask has become the face. To remove it feels like dying. Thomas Gilovich and his colleagues at Cornell ran a series of experiments in the late 1990s on what they called the spotlight effect. They had subjects wear obviously embarrassing t-shirts and walk through rooms of strangers. The subjects estimated, on average, that nearly half the people in the room had noticed and judged them. The actual number was under a quarter. Gilovich repeated the experiment with different shirts, different settings, different supposed flaws. The pattern held every time. People consistently overestimated how much others noticed them by a factor of nearly 2. The light you think on you isn't there. It never was. You've been performing in an empty theater. Sit with that. The diet you maintain for the imagined eyes. The car. The career you chose because it sounded right when you said it at parties. The opinions you hold because they signal the right team. The version of yourself you put online. None of it is for you. All of it is for a ghost who isn't watching. The second loss is the loss of the audience in your head. Killing the ghost. And it's brutal because the ghost has been your entire identity. Without it, you don't know who you are. That's the point. The third loss, the future you've already lived in. Most people don't live in the present. They don't live in the past. They live in the future they've never existed. They have it built, mapped, decorated. They know what their house will look like, what their relationship will feel like, what it will mean when they first arrive. And every day of their actual life is spent paying mental rent on this imaginary mansion. Seneca tore this habit apart in his 13th letter to Lucilius. Plura sunt quae nos terent quam quae primunt. More things frighten us than crush us, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. He was saying something specific. He was saying that most of human suffering isn't caused by what happens. It's caused by what we project will happen, and what we mourn when the projection doesn't arrive. This is what makes the third loss so brutal. You don't just have to lose the outcome you wanted. You have to lose the entire imagined life you've been mentally living in. For some of you, that's the future where you finally get the love you wanted from a parent who is never going to give it. For others, it's the career you imagined at 25 that the actual world has refused to deliver. For others, it's the version of your relationship that exists in your head that has nothing to do with the person you actually live with. You're grieving things that never existed. And every day you don't put that grief down, you bleed energy into a corpse. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, these were his private journal, never meant to be published, that the present is all anyone has. To lose the present is to lose everything. To lose the future is to lose nothing, because the future was never in your hands. Almost no one does this, because the imagined future is comforting. It's the place where you finally arrive. There's a story about a Zen monk who was asked the secret of his serenity. He said, "When I walk, I walk. When I eat, I eat. When I sleep, I sleep." His student said, "But master, that's what we do too." The monk replied, "No, when you walk, you are already eating. When you eat, you are already sleeping. When you sleep, you are already walking." This is the third prison, the one where you're never actually going anywhere. And the only way out is to grieve the future you were never going to live anyway. Put it down. Let it stay buried. You'll feel something strange when you do this, a kind of cold air. The world becomes louder. Your eyes sharpen. Energy you've been spending on a phantom finally returns to you. But we're not done. There's something I haven't told you about loss. And if you don't understand it, every word so far is just another self-help fantasy. The fourth loss, hope itself. There is loss that liberates and there is loss that destroys. And most people, when they finally suffer, end up with the wrong kind. Take 2 prisoners in the same camp under identical conditions. Same starvation, same beatings, same daily sentence of dehumanization. One survives, one doesn't. The one who survives doesn't necessarily have more food, more luck, more stronger lungs. Frankl observed this with surgical precision. The survivors had something specific. They had a meaning that was forged inside the suffering, not waiting on the other side of it. The ones who died, and this part is rarely quoted, were the ones with the most hope. The ones who said, "I'll be out by Christmas." While Christmas came and they were still there, they died. Not metaphorically. They literally died. Their bodies failed within days, sometimes hours, of the day they marked. Hope killed them, because their entire psychological structure was scaffolded on a future event that didn't arrive. When the event failed, the structure collapsed. This is the fourth loss, and it's the one almost no one is willing to face. You have to lose hope, not despair into nihilism, something far more precise. You have to lose the specific shape of hope that says, I will be okay when X happens. The promotion, the reconciliation, the breakthrough, the day they finally see what you've been doing. Because as long as your peace is contingent on an outcome you don't control, you've handed your life to a hostage taker. Nietzsche understood this and gave it a brutal name, Amor, Fati, love of fate. He wasn't saying love what's good and tolerate what's bad. He was saying love all of it, the pain, the injustice, the catastrophe, not in a saccharine way, in a savage one. To say yes with your whole chest to the exact life you're living, including its horrors, because anything less means you're at war with reality, and reality always wins. He wrote in Ecce Homo, my formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati. That one wants nothing to be different. Not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Read that again, slowly. Not forward, not backward. He was demanding something almost no one will give. Permission for your life to be exactly what it is, including everything that has hurt you, everything that has gone wrong, everything you spent years wishing was different. This is not acceptance in the soft, therapeutic sense. This is harder. It's recognizing that the wishing itself is the wound, that every time you say, if only, you recut a vein you should have stitched up years ago. The samurai had a phrase recorded in the Hakagure, Shinigure, to live as if already dead. They knew that the warrior who treated himself as a corpse before battle was the warrior who could not be defeated, because the enemy could not threaten what no longer existed. The fourth prison is hope as bondage. The keys are in your hand the moment you stop waiting for a better past. The fifth loss, the self. Here's the deepest cut, the one most people will never make, because it sounds, on the surface, like madness. Every loss so far has been about something the self holds onto, the outcome, the mask, the future, hope. But who is the one doing the holding? Who is the one who keeps clutching, releasing, clutching again? There is a self underneath all this, the one we've been treating as the protagonist of the story, the one losing everything and becoming free. And the final, most uncomfortable insight, the one buried under every spiritual tradition that has ever scared the establishment, is this: that self is also a story. That self also has to dissolve. Lao Tzu wrote in the Tao Te Ching that the sage acts without acting and accomplishes without striving. Most translations make this sound mystical and useless. It isn't. He was describing a state where the strategic, gripping, calculating self steps aside, and what flows through the person is something cleaner, faster, more accurate in thought. Wu Wei, effortless action. He's not saying do nothing. He's saying lose the self that is doing the doing. There's a story, Zhuangzi, Lao Tzu's intellectual heir, told a master butcher named Cook Ding. The butcher had been carving up oxen for 19 years, and his blade was still as sharp as the day he started. When the king asked his secret, the butcher said something startling. He said he no longer used his eyes. He no longer used his hands. He found the natural openings in the animal, and his blade simply went where there was already space. He had stopped being a butcher, and butchering was happening through him. This sounds poetic until you start watching for it in yourself. When you've practiced something so long that you stop thinking, and the thing just happens, that's a glimpse. When you're so absorbed in something you forgot your name, that's a glimpse. The athletes call it the zone. The mystics call it satori. The Sufis call it fana. Different names, same dissolution. The self steps aside, and what comes through is sharper than anything the self could have produced on purpose. But here's what makes it the fifth and final loss. You can't manufacture it. You can't strategize your way into it. You can't perform it. The moment the self tries to lose itself for the benefits, the self is still there, still calculating, still in the way. This is the deepest paradox. The only way to win is to lose. But you can't lose if you're trying to win. You have to actually let go. For real. For nothing. For no return. The Stoics said it. The Taoists said it. The mystics, the warriors, the saints, the philosophers, across cultures that never met, they kept arriving at the same disturbing conclusion. The self wants to keep itself is the self that loses everything. The self willing to dissolve is the self that nothing can touch. Diogenes, in his clay barrel, wasn't poor. He had subtracted himself out of every system that uses fear of loss as its currency. There was nothing left for him, for Alexander to grip. That's why a king bowed to a man in a barrel. That's why Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations as private notes, not as books for fame. That's why Frankl could find meaning in a death camp while men with full bellies elsewhere were quietly killing themselves. They had, each in their own way, died before they died, and when the body finally went, there was nothing left to take. The one who walks out. Walk through all 5 losses slowly, over years, and something starts to happen. You become quieter, not because you have less to say, because what you say no longer comes from a need to be heard. The wound that needed witness has closed. You stop reacting to most things. People will notice this and assume you've gone cold. They project, they test you, they'll prod you for the old reactions, and you won't give them what they want, not out of spite, but because the apparatus that used to produce those reactions has been retired. You stopped performing. The version of you that exists in public, if it still exists, becomes either honest or absent. There is no middle ground anymore. You stop wanting things you used to want, not by suppressing the want. The want simply leaves, the way smoke leaves a room when the fire goes out. You'll see expensive things and feel nothing. You'll see opportunities for status and feel a strange, polite indifference, like someone offered you a meal you don't eat anymore. And the strangest thing happens, the thing every philosopher in every tradition has hinted at without quite being able to explain. The world starts giving you the things you stopped chasing. The Stoics had an explanation for this. Marcus wrote about it. The man who is not desperate is the man people trust. The man who is not desperate cannot be cornered into bad decisions. The man who is not desperate negotiates from a different gravity. There's also a colder mechanism beneath this. The desperate broadcast their desperation. Every micro movement, every word choice, every pause is read by the people around them. People, even unconsciously, adjust their behavior based on what they detect. They withhold from the desperate because the desperate are easier to control. They give to the indifferent because the indifferent might walk away. This is why ancient leaders cultivated such terrifying calm. It wasn't aesthetic, it was a power move. A man who appears to need nothing is a man who can be offered everything, because no one knows what currency would actually buy him. You become this person, not by performance, by subtraction. And here's the lingering uncomfortable truth, the one I've been circling the entire time. Most people will read this, nod, feel a flash of recognition, and then continue exactly as they've been living. Because the 5 losses are not insights, they are deaths, and no one volunteers for death. The ones who walk through them don't do it because they're enlightened. They usually do it because life forced them to. The breakup that gutted them, the career collapse, the diagnosis, the betrayal, the thing that broke the cathedral they built around the wrong outcome. They were stripped against their will, and on the other side, in the wreckage, they discovered what couldn't be taken. The privileged among them turned the experience into a philosophy. The rest just lived with it quietly. But what every one of them learned was the same thing. The thing you most fear losing is the thing that's been keeping you small. The grip is the cage. You don't have to wait for life to take it from you. You can practice. You can sit with the imagined loss before it arrives. You can let go on purpose, in small ways, until the muscle of release becomes stronger than the muscle of clinging. This is what the Stoics did before breakfast. This is what the samurai did before battle. This is what the mystics did in the dark. Not because they were unusual, because they were the small handful of human beings who refused to be controlled by what they were afraid to lose. So look at the thing you're most afraid to lose, the relationship you're holding too tight, the career you've built your identity around, the version of yourself you spent decades polishing for an audience that was never really watching, the future you've already mentally moved into, the hope that keeps you waiting instead of living. Pick one, just one. Sit with it tonight in the dark and ask yourself what you would be if it was gone. Not as catastrophe, as fact. Walk yourself through the day after, the week after, the year after. Notice what's still standing. Something is always still standing. That's the part of you that nothing in this world can take. That's the part the philosophers were trying to point you toward. The irreducible self that lies underneath every loss, every reputation, every story, every mask. The reason this knowledge has stayed forbidden isn't that it's complicated. A child could understand it. The reason is that it dismantles everything the world wants you to want. It makes you a worse customer, a more difficult employee, a less manipulable citizen, a person who cannot be sold the next thing because the next thing has stopped speaking your language. The men who understood this scared their kings. The women who understood this were burnt. The traditions that understood this were buried under noise designed to keep you reaching for the next outcome instead of seeing the cage the reaching itself is. You don't have to lose everything overnight. You just have to stop pretending the grip is making you safer. The only way to win is to lose what you were never able to actually keep. If this is the kind of thinking you came here for, the slower, sharper kind that doesn't apologize for going where most channels won't, subscribe, stay close, there's more in this direction.